Hi, my name is Reverend Nell Fields. I'm with the Becoit Congregational Church. Today I serve as a member of the steering committee of No Place for Hate, and we are putting on an incredible community event. It is our 13th annual Martin Luther King Jr. Community Breakfast. And I want to emphasize the word community because that is what this breakfast is all about. Bringing people together from all walks of life to celebrate the life and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. We have a lot going on. We have students from Falmouth Elementary Schools going to be reciting part of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. There's going to be singing, and our keynote speaker is Dr. Donique McIntosh. She is the racial justice leader for the Southern New England Conference of the United Church of Christ. But more importantly, we have students from Falmouth Academy and Falmouth High School who have contributed so much to this event by making ceramics, table decorations, discussion questions for people to answer. And we're so delighted to have so many students be a part of this. And another thing is we also have a community room where we have tables from community organizations, nonprofits that do the important work of social and racial and economic justice in this area. They're going to be giving out free information, answering questions. So we're thrilled to be here.
Again, if you're not comfortable, that's fine.
Obviously.
Yeah, ceramics is an assignment. Right.
Okay, Debbie, Children's Cove?
We
No,
work
that's
with
Just move your way.
Hi there, how are you today?
I'm going to take a picture.
We're here at the Seacrest to celebrate the Martin Luther King breakfast. And it's very exciting to know that at this moment, all over the country, there are people who are doing the same thing. They are celebrating the legacy of Martin Luther King. So we're raising our coffee cups in a toast.
Good morning. Welcome to the annual Martin Luther King Day breakfast put on by No Place for Hate Falmouth, who is just really so tremendous. I hope you will give a round of applause for No Place for Hate Falmouth. I just note that as we gather here today to really celebrate the legacy of Dr. King and think about the work that lies ahead, that we really do so with a sense of urgency. I would just hope that we reflect on the fact that, unfortunately, hate crimes are on the rise. The number of hate crimes are higher than they've been in years in this country, and it's not happening somewhere else. It's right here in our own community. We've had several acts of anti-Semitism just in the last couple of months here in Falmouth. So when we talk about the fight for social justice, it's not in the past. It's not something where we can really take our foot off the gas. It is real, it is now, and it is about the quality of life, human dignity, and in some cases really about life and death. So I hope that we are here today. We're replenishing our bodies with this wonderful food. We're going to replenish our spirits by being here together. And we do so that we can take that fight forward and continue the work of Dr. King. We're here today with our fellow co-liberators, and we're really reflecting on the work that's been done and the work that continues to lie ahead. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your day. My only complaint is that we celebrate Dr. King in January and not in June or July when we could be, a lot warmer. But it's warm in here and our spirits are warm, so thank you for being here. Just want to welcome a few. Oh, thank you. Actually, let me just start off by thanking. There are a number of individuals who make today possible. And certainly it starts off with the No Place for Hate Falmouth MLK Breakfast Committee, who really is in charge of putting on this event. If you look around, this is not a small event. For many years we were at the Coonamessett, and I think we really outgrew that space, which is a wonderful thing. And we're here at the Seacrest and able to fill this room. And so huge thanks to that committee. Also want to thank our musicians, Ted Jelinek and Laura Bowles. Thank you. Of course, our guest speaker today that we're going to hear from, Dr. Donique McIntosh. Thank you for being here today. And I think many of you were greeted by students from Falmouth Academy with their counselor, Carol DeFalco. They were up at the front. My son was one of them, so I'm going to embarrass him and say hello to my son. Also, we have beautiful ceramics. We want to thank the Falmouth High School ceramic art students and teacher Corinne Adams. If people didn't get a chance to look, please do so after when you visit some of the community tables. If you haven't done that, it's really a wonderful opportunity to see some of the organizations that are in our community that are doing really important work every day. And you can also take a look at those absolutely beautiful ceramics that are there. And then, of course, we're going to have a presentation, as we always do, from Morse Pond students with their teachers Lynn Busher and Janine Kelly, and they're going to provide a little bit of music for us because every gathering needs music and celebration. So we thank them. And especially a huge thanks to the staff here at the Seacrest. The Seacrest, if folks don't know, I think it's very fitting we're here because about 25 years ago, the Seacrest went from having its staff come in almost every day from New Bedford. They had a lot of Portuguese American and Portuguese women come from New Bedford to work, and they couldn't get enough staff for this very large and very sort of iconic resort. And so they brought in lots of seasonal workers from Jamaica. I know because I worked in the, I was a lifeguard at the pool down the hall. And those individuals who came to work here back in 1994 for that first summer, so many of them became part of our community. They stayed, they had families, they started businesses, and they really created another component of our community in Falmouth. So, the thing I think we reflect on, or hope we reflect on while we're here, is the importance of recognizing the contribution, particularly in this community, of immigrants who continue to be an enormous part of the fabric of Falmouth, and who add so very much to our economic vibrancy, our cultural vibrancy. And so the Seacrest, I think, is a very fitting place for us to have this breakfast. Just a quick welcome to some folks who are here. I saw Congressman Keating and his wife Tevis. Thank you for being here. And if I miss you, please forgive me. I'll catch you on another go around. I saw Chief Dunn. I saw our Superintendent of Public Schools, Lori Dewar, and her husband, Doug. Head of Schools, Falmouth Academy, Matt Green. I have my fellow members of the Board of Selectmen, Doug Brown, and Susan Moran, and Sam Patterson. I see staff here from our departments in town, from Human Services, from Personnel. I see individuals from Affirmative Action Committee here in Falmouth, as well as the Mashpee Diversity and Inclusion Committee. There are also folks from the Human Services Committee, from Affordable Housing Committee here in Falmouth, and lots of other people. I see teachers, and most importantly, there are a lot of youth in this room. I want to just thank the youth for being here. We know you have lots going on, but we're handing the mantle to you. You are really the individuals who will carry on this work. So for all of the young people in this room, thank you for being here. And we have a lot of hope for your Okay, I hope that was everybody. All right, I would love to welcome up the Reverend Christina Williams, who is new to Falmouth. She is the minister of the North Falmouth Congregational Church. I think she just came here in January, so January 3rd, so just a few weeks ago. This is typical Falmouth. The minute somebody new comes, we scoop you up and we put you to work. So thank you for being here, and she's going to give our opening prayer.
So what a joy it is to be here with all of you. Yes, I'm the newbie on the block, and yes, I was roped into this, but gladly so. And what a gathering. I'm just so heartened by seeing all of you here. So let us bring our hearts together in prayer. By whatever name we call you, O gracious one, you are the one who seeks to draw us together and unite us in a common dream of justice and love. You remind us that there is more that draws us together than breaks us apart. You remind us that we are better together. We are grateful to come together in your name to break bread and to dream dreams of a world united in your justice-seeking love. We thank you for the light of your love that shines for us in the darkest of places. Let your light not only shine for us, but also reflect off of us to the world around us. Let that light so illuminate our souls that we would be changed and be agents of change, that dream dreams of prophets, past and present, who would be realized and lived out through us, and we would see them and so that they would become real in us, and that we would know that all which unites us in you is always greater than anything that could divide us. We are better together, O God. We are one in you. We ask your blessing on those gathered here today. May we be illuminated and moved by all that we see and hear. We pray in your holy name. Amen.
And that just reminds me, I forgot to say thank you and welcome to all of the members of our faith community. You've really been leaders in the discussion about social justice in this town. And I know many of you are part of this particular event, but many other very important events that go on. So thank you to the many individuals that are here. And I think I forgot to say welcome to our town manager, Julian Suso, and his wife, Stephanie, who always attend this event. So thank you for being here. I would like to welcome up Congressman Bill Keating, who is no stranger to any of us here. He is the type of representative that you can call and he shows up, he listens, he reflects. He always joins us on this morning to share his thoughts and to share, more importantly, the work that he continues to do on our behalf to really promote social justice and to make sure that we are constantly thinking about the way that decisions impact all of us. So thank you for being here, Congressman. Welcome.
Thank you, Megan, and thank all of you. I want to congratulate No Place for Hate in Falmouth. This is an extraordinary crowd. It was last year. It sells itself out, and it should. And it really, in a time to remember Dr. King, is more important, I think, than it has been in decades. And I also want to thank, and we have a citation for Samantha Bauer later on that will be presented with other recognitions. Congratulations on your being selected. And I just want to comment this morning as I just take a few moments to reflect upon today that I have been blessed with serving with a person who is an icon but has become a friend and an inspiration, and that is Congressman John Lewis. And I ask all of you to remember him in your prayers and thoughts as he takes another courageous battle forward in his battle against pancreatic cancer. He, more than anyone else, when I was first elected to office, when I was elected but not even yet sworn in, I only had one request as I went to the Capitol to try and assemble a team and set up an office, I said, is it possible that I could meet one person? And that person was Congressman Lewis. And he graciously had me in. We spent a morning talking, and I got chills as he got up in his office and at the time that showed me the window that you could overlook the reflecting pool, where over 55, 56 years ago now, he got up and addressed the March on Washington with Dr. Martin Luther King, his personal friend. He was a person that just didn't give speeches. As you probably know, he spilled blood and was beaten to submission, but not ever submitting, on Edmund Pettus Bridge as he crossed over in Selma. He is a gift to us all in Congress, a gift to our country, and today he continues to inspire me with the living actions, not just the memories, of Dr. King. I just want to take, in a very punctuated way, a couple of thoughts about the fact that Dr. King's message has and always will be not just words, but action. And I think today that's more important than ever. And we've seen so many legislative responses to the messages and themes of Dr. King because action is needed today. And with leaders like John Lewis, we were able to successfully pass through the House some important pieces. And I could dwell on some of the pieces that are also important, that deal with the issues of violence that Dr. King so forcefully argued against, where we've passed gun violence reduction laws. I can point to the fact that on immigration issues, as Megan mentioned too, that we've passed and languished for months over in the Senate, bills to deal with DACA, deal with TPS, citizens who are here, that are Americans, that should be recognized as such. And we could deal with issues clearly that are important in terms of economic effects that Dr. King so strongly felt about. We passed bills raising the minimum wage and making sure that it's equal pay for men and women for the same work. So we've done a lot, but three things in particular struck me as mentioning today, just briefly, and that is, number one, in terms of action, how important it was that we acted on already, and I hope there'll be action, pray there'll be action by the end of the year, dealing with a Supreme Court case that took away the oversight over voting rights. We have in states in our country today the votes being suppressed time and time again, and it continues, and we have people fighting it in the courts, and we're fighting it in the legislature. They're fighting it in those communities, in those states, but it still exists today, and it takes the very precious right to vote away from Americans who deserve to have that bill. So we passed over a Voting Rights Act that addresses that Supreme Court decision, that is constitutional, that'll make sure there's some protection in those states where they continue to abuse this suppression of the votes and taking people's precious votes away. And I will give you this brief quote from Dr. King, who said, so long as I do not firmly and irrevocably possess the right to vote, I do not possess myself. I cannot make up my own mind. I can only submit to the edict of others. Dr. King. And that's why that is so important, and we should be continuing our effort to make sure that legacy that so many people fought for is not taken away from us. The second of three I'll mention is the Equality Act. And that gives the same basic protections, federal protections against discrimination that exists now, and extends it to the LGBTQ community, making sure they have the same basic rights against being discriminated against in housing and education and finance that we all have. And I'll punctuate that by this quote of Dr. King. Injustice to anyone is a threat to justice to everyone. Words to remember on that. And the third one I'll just mention is our action just recently with a War Powers resolution. And that's something Dr. King spoke out at a very controversial time in our country, and it's something we should all remember, that sending our young men and women to war is something that should be one of our primary and most sober decisions that we make. And it shouldn't be made lightly, and it shouldn't be made without checks and balances. And Dr. King understood this. And a quote that I remember of his, he talked about that old law about an eye for an eye leaves everyone blind. The time is always right to do the right thing. I picked those three because they're so relevant to today. So the words of Dr. King are with us today. Those challenges are there, and regrettably, so much that they did, those leaders, like John Lewis, like Dr. King, how much they gave, giving their life, taking beatings, committing their time, putting them up to scorn and threats. That is sifting away from us today, even the progress that was made then. Because we have to understand, on Martin Luther King Day, as we remember him, that these are rights and freedoms that people fought for, because they weren't there before. And unfortunately, in a democracy even, they can be taken away, and they're fragile if we don't stand up and continue to fight to not only retain them, but to go further to help people and take the words of Dr. King and make them a reality going forward. That's what today is about. And as we remember Dr. King, we should remember this. If we don't act, if that's not incorporated with a commitment to act and to move forward, then today will just be about memories. We must act, we must move forward if we truly going to make sure that what he fought for, what we share, what our children and grandchildren will share, what hopefully the world will look at our country as being, once again, a strong beacon of these freedoms. These are the messages of Dr. King. That's why we gathered here today in Falmouth. That's why they're gathering all over the country. And I hope together, and I trust and I do believe together, that people, arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder, yellow, brown, black, white, working together, we will accomplish and make sure we take his actions, his words of today, and take them, as he said, to the mountaintop. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Keating. Now I would like to welcome our students from Morris Pond School, who've been waiting very patiently. Tight quarters here, so.
Hi everyone, I'm Lynn Busher, and these are my Busher Van Dyce students. I teach English and Social Studies to both the Busher and Van Dyce class. And Martin Luther King is a very important person with whom I teach every year, and this year he is part of the Massachusetts state curriculum. And sadly, his message is still extremely poignant, and so I do have the children memorize just a short little excerpt of that speech. So without further ado, here are my Busher Van Dyce students.
slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that my poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places shall be made plain, and the crooked places shall be made straight, and the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together.
Coming up next, hi, my name is Janine Kelly, and I teach music at the Morris Pond School, and I invite all of you, please, to join in singing with us What a Wonderful World, and we're accompanied by Mr. Jelenik on the keyboards over here. Just give me a chance to get over
It's always hard to come back up after that song. It really is. You like a collective breath there. So wonderful, and thank you to both, to Lynn and Janine. They do this every year, and thank you to the parents who bring the kids. It's really just so important to incorporate our students into today's reflection, so thank you. I'd like to invite up now Rabbi Elias Lieberman, who's going to give out the No Place for Hate Falmouth Civic Leadership Award to this year's recipient, Samantha Bauer. So please come on up, Rabbi Lieberman.
Friends, I have a question. Can everyone hear the speakers?
Yes.
God bless the Seacrest. They installed a new sound system since we were here last year. I'm glad. Samantha, I'll invite you up in just a minute, but I won't have you stand here being embarrassed while I speak. Each year, the Civic Leadership Award of No Place for Hate Falmouth is given to an individual or organization whose work and commitments reflect a desire to actualize in our community the values for which Dr. King lived and died, and which all of us honor by our presence this morning. This year we honor Samantha Bauer and the organization she founded, Inspiration is Everywhere Incorporated. If you don't know Samantha and Inspiration is Everywhere, which seems highly unlikely to me since she is everywhere all the time, let me tell you why we honor Samantha and her work today. I quote the mission statement for Inspiration is Everywhere. Our purpose is to create and strengthen social bonds through incorporated learning and community building. We seek to combine the elements of education and creative growth with community outreach, advocacy, and services for people of varying needs. We offer creative solutions to unconventional problems. We believe that we can inspire a better world through our creative outlets that seek to expand the ways in which people view the world artistically. It is also our unifying belief that everyone is an artist to varying degrees, and that with the right creative process, art can and should be educational. We organize and host different events focused on community enrichment that showcase the talent of local residents in a fun and interactive learning environment and foster a sense of belonging. Inspired by her mother, grandmother, and other family members and friends, Samantha committed herself to serving others at a tender age, and she has not stopped. Since its founding in 2018, Inspiration is Everywhere has sponsored programs and activities that include homeless outreach and assistance, community building, youth outreach, incorporated learning initiatives that include but are not limited to holistic art education, environmental outreach, and interactive creativity workshops. Inspiration is Everywhere has sponsored all-night fundraisers to support other organizations, including the Falmouth Service Center, AMVETS Post 70, Cape Cod Pride, and full disclosure, No Place for Hate Falmouth. I was there through the night for that event, and it was a joy to behold. Every 6 weeks, Inspiration is Everywhere coordinates a team of volunteers to go to Boston or Hyannis, depending on the need, on its central Boston volunteer outreach. 10 to 15 suitcases are packed with donations and purchased items, consisting of food, clothing, hygiene products. Volunteers travel, walking on specified routes in parts of Boston that have large concentrations of displaced peoples. At the end of a 5-hour walking loop, remaining donations are given to shelters in the area. I could go on at length about the enormous breadth of activities that Samantha and her dedicated team of supporters bring to our community, but we'd be here all morning were I to do so. Suffice it to say that this 30-year-old powerhouse is an inspiration to us all. Samantha is an artist, a musician, a lover of the outdoors, a seasoned traveler, a recycler and an upcycler, and so much more. I will let Samantha's own words convey some of her truth. Samantha writes, "You can take things that are old and discarded, and you can make them into something beautiful. My mom always taught me that you can do that with your life, too. When you have all these broken pieces of your life, you can upcycle them. It's not going to be the same as it was before, but it can be something just as great." A message that Samantha took from her study of philosophy fueled the development of Inspiration is Everywhere. Samantha writes, "Inspiration is Everywhere has its intentions rooted in Socratic altruism, meaning we want to inspire a better world simply because it is that world we wish to live in. It benefits all to benefit each other." To that expression of commitment, Dr. King would surely respond, "Amen." It's a privilege to present to Samantha Bauer and Inspiration is Everywhere the No Place for Hate Falmouth Civic Leadership Award for 2020. Samantha, would you join me? Samantha, it's also my privilege to present to you on behalf of Congressman Keating and the United States Congress the Certificate of Special Congressional Recognition.
Brief, I promise. Thank you all for being here. This is really cool. It's a lot of That's all right. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. So first of all, I would like to say thank you to No Place for Hate. Your group is always such an inspiration to me, and coming to this breakfast every year is always a wonderful experience. Just thinking of the people before me who have won this award both honors and humbles me. I started the company Inspiration is Everywhere 2 years ago with a crazy idea and a few very supportive friends, without whom I would not be here today. I wanted to provide a more professional platform for one of my lifelong passions, helping people in my community. I was saddened by so many stories I had heard from people who had fallen in between the cracks of our large but imperfect network of assistance on Cape Cod. We have many services available, but some have limitations and people don't always qualify. I wanted to be able to say yes where other organizations had to say no. We have helped people of all ages, beliefs, and backgrounds. And among our many endeavors, we've gotten someone's heat fixed during the winter. We've held someone's hand as they died in the hospital. We provided advocacy for people with special needs, driven people to appointments, helped people pay bills, done chores for the elderly, picked up trash at beaches and parks, supported people getting sober, and held dozens of community events with the intent to foster an environment where everyone feels like they belong. As a completely volunteer-run organization, all of these things have been done by people in our community, for people in our community. Our mission teaches that everyone needs help at some point in life, and asking for it should be common. As Elias said, growing up, I was inspired by my family, who taught me that creativity was the key to overcoming any obstacle. Falmouth, and by extension, Cape Cod, is a small community. And while many of us are actually blood related, hello Cape Verdeans, it feels like we all are anyway. We all have needs that we can't handle on our own, and we all have skills and talents that we can offer. So asking for help from one another should be easy. Together we can make sure it is. You can check on your neighbors, get to know them. Introduce yourself to strangers. Volunteer. Everyone who knows me has heard me say 100 times, there are 7.5 billion people on this planet, and at some point every single one of us has felt loneliness. And this is a devastating thought. I envision for our community a place where children grow up feeling like they have a voice, and that their presence here is needed, and where people are not ashamed to ask for help, where neighbors feel like family, and loneliness is unacceptable in a society where we are all held accountable. Thank you again to No Place for Hate for recognizing me today, and for giving the diverse voices in our community a platform to be heard. And thank you all for coming.
Every year, No Place for Hate makes a great choice when they give out this award, but this is just tremendous to see the work that you're doing and the benefit that it is bringing to our community. So thank you. Now, I have the great pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker, Dr. Donique McIntosh. Dr. McIntosh is currently the Minister for Racial Justice for the Southern New England Conferences of the United Church of Christ. Her calling has been as an advocate for social justice. It's led her to colleges, nonprofits, national conferences, state legislative offices, and the White House. Her writing has appeared in scholarly journals and the Huffington Post. I was speaking with her this morning, and she really sort of describe the work that she does, and because that work around social justice is so needed, I think her statement was every day looks different in her job, because she is sometimes facilitating discussions at churches that are having some difficult issues around race. Other times she's really promoting in a larger sense the church and other communities reflecting on the meaning of social justice and the work to be done. So we are so thrilled that she's here with us today with her talk entitled A Restless Determination. So please join me in welcoming our guest speaker, Dr. McIntosh.
Morning. Wait, morning. No, it is morning. Okay. Wait a minute, maybe it's afternoon. I greet you on behalf of the Southern New England Conference of the United Church of Christ, where I serve as the Minister for Racial Justice. And it's nice to be here. It's nice to look out and see such a diverse gathering of creation. It's nice. I'm always thankful to be able to go around and speak and connect with people. And I'm especially thankful and honored, actually, to be able to share this day in particular with you, reflecting on the life and the work of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His motto and his ministry have been so influential in shaping my own life and ministry. And so I'm just humbled to be here. So thank you, Reverend Fields, I don't know where she went, for the invitation, and for everyone who had a role in making today happen. And I'd like to acknowledge everyone else participating in the program today, especially the young people. Can we get another round of applause for the young For a hot second, I thought Megan was in my hotel room this morning with my speech. So I had a little side eye at first. I said, wait a minute, Megan. Without further ado. 7,120. That's the number of hate crimes that were reported to the FBI in 2018, which is the most recent collected data available. 7,120. That's 7,120 too many. Experts say that more than half of victims of hate crimes don't report the crimes to authorities, so the numbers of incidents are actually higher than that. The FBI defines a hate crime as a criminal offense against a person or property motivated in whole or in part by an offender's bias against a race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender, or gender identity. Just before 10 a.m. on Saturday, October 27, 2018, as 3 congregations in Pittsburgh were preparing to start services, a white supremacist entered the building. Armed with a semi-automatic rifle, he talked about killing Jews, and in less than 11 minutes had taken 11 lives and changed the lives of countless others, all because he'd been taught to hate Jews. Louis Rivette recruited Graham Williamson to build and burn a wooden cross near the home of an African-American teenager in Seminary, Mississippi. They did it to threaten, intimidate, and frighten the boy and other African-American residents in that neighborhood. It was October 2017 when they committed the crime, and both white men later admitted to knowing that cross burning has been used as an intimidation tactic throughout American history to terrorize black people. Williamson told authorities that he only burned the cross to save the lives of the boy and his family, because Rivette intended to burn the house down completely. He said, when I went over to my boss's house, he was planning on blowing the house up. I talked him down to just burning a cross in the yard. I felt like it was the right thing to do by burning the cross versus letting him blow the house up. I felt like it was the right thing to do. Kicked and beaten until she lost consciousness, Malaysia Booker, an African-American transgender woman in Texas, told police that her assailants used homophobic slurs as they kicked and beat her in April of 2019. A video of the assault was posted on Facebook. A month later, she was found shot to death. She was only 23. The man arrested in connection with her death is a person of interest in the murder of another African-American transgender woman who was killed 2 weeks later. This past November, on a random Friday night in Milwaukee, Clifton Blackwell threw acid on a Latino man's face as he was heading into a Mexican restaurant for dinner. The acid caused second-degree burns on his face, neck, and cheeks. Blackwell asked the victim why he had invaded his country, called him an illegal, cursed at him, and told him to go back to wherever he thought he'd come from. Even though these crimes took place in different places around the country, were not committed by the same people, and targeted different groups, there were some common denominators. The first thing that struck me was the ordinariness of what they were doing. Going to worship services like they did every Saturday. Living in your neighborhood. Driving down the street. Getting dinner when you're hungry. These people were just doing ordinary things and then something extraordinary happened to them. The second common denominator was that each perpetrator had been taught to devalue lives. In each instance, the perpetrators had been taught that some people's lives matter more than others. They've been taught that there's a hierarchy in this world and that some people are rightfully at the top of it while others are rightfully at the bottom of it. Oppression is taught. It's taught in our families, in our schools, in our faith communities, in our legislative policies, in our music, in our books. And once you've taken in the teaching that some people are naturally above or better than others in some way like race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, or socioeconomic status, it's not a big leap to the common third denominator. All of the perpetrators were violent towards another person or group of people, shooting, beating, kicking, burning crosses, and throwing acid on someone are natural outcomes of being taught and believing that someone is beneath us. These forms of violence serve to damage the person or people on the receiving end, but also serve to send a message to others like them. You can be shot, beaten, kicked, have a cross burned near your home, or have acid thrown on you too. The recent FBI report backs me up. The report indicated that while the number of hate crimes actually dipped in 2018, violence against individuals rose to a 16-year high. Violence against individuals includes crimes like intimidation, assault, and homicide. Brian Levin, who directs the Center for Study of Hate and Extremism, said that the increase in assaults was almost evenly distributed across demographic groups, with African Americans, Jews, whites, gays, and Latinos targeted the most. Another notable finding was that in hate crimes that are fueled by racism, people who look like me continue to be the most frequently targeted. Violence, Martin Luther King said, is the antithesis of creativity and wholeness. It destroys community and makes brotherhood impossible. As I was thinking about what I would talk with you all about today, I looked through a book called A Testament of Hope, The Essential Writings and Speeches of Martin Luther King, Jr. I chose to read an article entitled The Current Crisis in Race Relations. And I looked at it to see if there was anything there that could speak to what I believe is our current crisis in race relations. Published in 1958, Dr. King wrote in it that the problem of race is America's greatest moral dilemma. And I would amend his statement by saying that racism is America's greatest moral dilemma. Race by itself is neutral. It's just a difference between us. Racism, however, is a difference with value attached to it that has real impact on people's lives. Dr. King made this claim 62 years ago, and sadly, it's still true. The examples of hate crimes I described a little while ago, they just happened in the last 3 years. The Jewish people who attended the synagogue in Pittsburgh lost valued members of their community that day. One woman whose husband was killed told reporters a year later that her life is still a daily struggle. The community there still feels a lack of security. The teenager's grandmother said that the cross burning brought back a lot of fear and terror of the past. She says she's afraid now that the men who burned the cross, or maybe somebody else, will come back to get them. The fear they feel is not unlike the fear of the victim of the acid attack, though. At a news conference, he said he doesn't feel protected in his own country with his neighbors. And as the numbers of murders of black trans women increase, the very real, long-held fears associated with white supremacy are amplified when joined with sexism and transphobia. Fear should not be a constant companion when doing everyday things like living. We have a right to feel safe. We have a human need to feel safe. Hate crimes are serious and devastating for the individual targets, their families, communities, and sometimes even us as a whole nation. There were 7,120 of them in 2018, you might recall. So the fact is, they happened. The reason we have a Martin Luther King holiday is because he was killed because of someone's bias. He didn't die of natural causes. And as serious and as devastating as hate crimes are, other types of violence are probably more common. I mean, most of us murder someone, beat someone up, burn a cross, or throw acid on another person. So I want to and have to talk about the other ways that we're violent towards each other. There's other evidence of this crisis in race relations. How many of you have heard of microaggressions? Racial microaggressions are defined by researchers at Columbia University as brief and commonplace daily verbal, behavioral, or environmental indignities, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative insults and slights. So they're more subtle than the overt racism I described a little while ago. Sometimes described as death by 1,000 cuts, microaggressions are commonplace. Once I was traveling on a train from Florida to Virginia as I was heading to start graduate school in Pennsylvania. The ride included a dinner train, so I was seated with other passengers for dinner. I was the only person of color amongst the group, and so we started exchanging pleasantries. The question arose about where each of us were headed. I explained that I was relocating to Philadelphia to go to grad school. In trying to guess the school I was headed to, one white woman started to rattle off names and colleges in the Philadelphia area. After saying no to all the schools she'd named, she looked confused and inquired as to what school I'd be attending. When I named that I'd be attending the University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League institution, the look of shock on her face was obvious. She had her assumption challenged and her stereotype disproven, and I was angry and tired. Hanging nooses on doors, wearing blackface for Halloween or for fun, assuming that someone Asian or Latino came to the United States from another country, calling someone illegal or an alien, are all examples of other forms of racism that marginalize or question a person's identity. And they all damage the people on the receiving end, but they also damage the person committing the microaggression, even if they don't know it consciously. Researchers at Columbia have found that racial microaggression lead to higher levels of depression and trauma and suicidal thoughts in people of color. They also, though, undermine the trust between white people and people of color in getting services like health care in workplaces and in schools. Thinking back for a minute to the information I shared about hate crimes, I want to make a connection to bias against Latinos. With the increased attention being paid to immigration and immigration policies in this country recently, there's also been an increase in Latino-targeted hate crimes for the last 3 years in a row, according to the FBI. When people in positions of power use stereotypes and derogatory words to describe groups of people, people feel empowered to mistreat those people and to do it through conscious acts like physical violence and things like legislative policies. Racial disparities continue to exist across educational institutions, the job market, in media representation, healthcare, and political participation, which all point to our current racial crisis. For instance, a white person with the same earnings, level of education, and comparable job as a black applicant is still more likely to be offered a mortgage. In elementary and secondary schools between 2011 and 2012, white girls were suspended at the rate of 2%, while black girls were suspended at a rate of 12%, and Native American girls were suspended at a rate of 7% higher than their white male peers. Robbie DiAngelo, in her book White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism, noted that in 2016 and 17, United States Congress was 90% white. The people who decide which TV shows we get to see were 93% white. The people who decide which books we read were 90% white. The people who decide which music is produced were 95% white. And the owners of men's professional football teams were 97% white. And I want to pause here and make it clear that what I'm naming as problematic or the crisis is white supremacy, not individual white people. I mean, sometimes it's individual white people. White supremacy is a part of the culture in which we live. It's the belief that white people, white culture, and things associated with whiteness are superior to those of other racial groups. White supremacy keeps us divided. And as long as white supremacy is allowed to flourish, we'll continue to have the moral dilemma that Dr. King named back in 1958. He called it a moral dilemma. Not just a dilemma, a moral dilemma. A question of right and wrong, proper and improper, appropriate and inappropriate. A question of what's ethical and unethical, just and unjust. A moral dilemma. A dilemma is something that brings the one facing it to a point of decision. A dilemma is a catalyst, something that moves a person from inaction to action. A dilemma forces us to choose this or that. It unsettles us, makes us restless. I see these dilemmas play out in my work in racial justice all the time. Part of my work involves doing racial justice workshops with groups. It's not uncommon to hear participants say that talking about race is what divides us. Racism, in fact, is the thing that divides us. And by not talking openly and honestly about its impact on all of us, we continue to tell a false narrative. The inequalities that exist between white people and people of color are what some religious people would call sin. And the dishonesty surrounding the narrative presents a moral dilemma too. Do we tell the truth if we're people of color about what our lives are really like? Can I face the truth if I'm a white person? What does courage look like in the face of hearing that truth? What am I willing to risk for the sake of someone else's well-being? These are moral questions. Racism is still America's greatest moral dilemma. Imagine for a moment that Dr. King had been a medical doctor and that America was his patient. He might have said something like this: what you are suffering from, America, is a chronic case of racism. After reviewing all the tests that have been run on you since you were born, that's the only diagnosis I could reach. It's all in your blood work. The heart trouble you've been having can be traced back to racism. The recurring headaches you've been having are because of racism. It's kept you in constant pain and has impacted your ability to move forward. Your thinking is fuzzy and you've had some difficulty in your relationships. With all this going on, it's no wonder you have anxiety about what lies ahead and you have trouble getting rest. Fortunately, he would have said, I have the right treatment for your condition. What you need is a restless determination to make the ideal of siblinghood a reality in this nation and all over the world. This restless determination is the only thing that'll save you. It's the only thing that'll make you whole. I don't know about you, but when I think about the word restless, a lot of things come to mind. I think of the fidgety young person in a classroom, or the person who's been in a staff meeting longer than they wanted to be. And I think about how I felt when I watched my hometown team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, play the Golden State Warriors for the 2016 NBA championship. I mean, I was pacing around my living room that night. I was on edge. I couldn't sit still for very long. I was restless. Cavs won, by the way. The type of restlessness Dr. King prescribes suggests a sense of being ill at ease. He said there are some things all of us ought to be restless about. He was restless about vicious mob rule, segregation, and discrimination. He was restless about economic inequality, militarism, and physical violence. This restlessness, he prescribed, is a tool. We should be restless because an individual has not started living until they can rise above the narrow confines of their individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. We should be restless because whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality, he said. He believed that the salvation of the world lies in the hands of those with this restless determination. He challenged us to have a restless determination. May your unease with half-truths transform your apathy into action. May your discomfort with violence disturb you when you try to sleep at night. May your spirit be so troubled by statistics that your silence becomes speech that saves. May the tension you feel when you hear a racist joke become a teachable moment. May you be restless. May you be determined. May you be restlessly determined to make the ideal of siblinghood a reality in this nation and all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. McIntosh. I wasn't looking at your speech. I promise I was home last night. I wasn't peeking at the speech ahead of time in your room. But I think we are thinking the same thing because it's so pressing. That some of her words just made me think about a quote from Toni Morrison that talks about the impact of racism and how the people who practice racism are the ones whose psyches are distorted. And it is, as she discusses, really a sickness of the spirit and of the mind. And that while the impact of racism sort of flows out and disproportionately affects people of color, all of us as a society are really distorted by our system of racism and the thinking that is really necessary to perpetuate that. So I hope that we each, from whatever place that we are in, reflect on the ways that we can really from our own places of privilege, whatever that might be able to step forward and be co-liberators and be allies for the people in our lives, for those jokes, for those moments that are uncomfortable with our own family members. Very easy to be brave when you are able to do it amongst strangers. Much harder when you're really confronting your own thoughts of bias or those about the people that you love the most. So I hope that we take those words and we think about that as a sickness and how you can cure it. I want to just invite everyone up. We're going to have, as we often do, we're going to end in song. And so if people want to in a moment stand and join hands or sit if you're more comfortable doing that. And we are going to have Rabbi Lieberman and I think Pam McCarthy is going to come up and Pam Rothstein, excuse me, and come up and sing We Shall Overcome, and I believe that Ted is going to accompany them. And before we start the song, I just wanted to say, I was thinking about John Lewis when we were hearing Congressman Keating's words, and a story that I heard not too long ago. John Lewis was getting ready to go to college, and his mother said, "Don't get in any trouble." He was 18, and he had already at 18 met Dr. King. He was already involved in the civil rights movement, had actually gone to meet individually Dr. King, and he said from that meeting he knew that he was going to get into trouble, and it was going to be good trouble, and that's what he said to his mother. Sometimes we have to get into trouble, but it's good trouble. So I invite all of us here to think about getting into trouble and doing the right thing and really carrying on the legacy of Dr. King and all those who stood with him. So thank you, and please join us in song.
The lyrics are in your program.
Are we gonna sing a song? Yes. We shall
I'm Marie Younger Blackburn, and I am glad to be here today. I don't know how many years this has made that I've come here, at least 5 in a row, and it's always a wonderful day to be able to get together with community and celebrate the life and the work of Dr. Martin Luther King. We are in perilous times right now. We are a very divided nation, and it's days like this that bring us together to remind us who we really are and what it is like for a country to have a desire for togetherness and for peace and for social justice. So I commend the organizers of this event, and that I hope that it would go on for many years to come. I think this year has been the most diverse year that I've ever seen, diverse in age, in race, in gender, and I am very excited to see the progression. So keep doing the good work, and I will see you next year. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say it's such a pleasure to be part of a community like Falmouth and the other surrounding communities and see an outpouring of support for an occasion like this. I've basically been involved in the civil rights movement for, 40 years, probably more than that. No, really, no more than that, 50 years. I actually participated in the Poor People's March on Washington, D.C. that Jesse Jackson organized. So when I sing "We Shall Overcome," I just get teary-eyed because all those memories come back. But I was very impressed with the speakers that we had today that really touched on a lot of the core seeds of racism and how it's evident in our society and in our politics and what have you. So coming together and seeing that it's just not a few people who are leading the charge to try to promote goodwill and a better environment that's supportive of all people, but to see a group like this get together, which represents a larger population within this community, is just really uplifting to me and rewarding to know that you're not just simply one of a few, but part of a larger group of people that are kindred spirits in trying to benefit humanity. So, it's been a pleasure to be here, and my hat's off to No Place for Hate for organizing this event and giving us all that inspiration to keep seeking a better world.
Hi, this is Susan Moran from the Falmouth Board of Selectmen at the No Place for Hate incredible event at the Seacrest. So many faith people from schools, people from town government. It was really very uplifting, and it's one of 2 events. I was earlier at a Plymouth event that was very inspiring. This is something we should be mindful of every single day. Thanks to everyone who participated and put it together.
Thank you so much for putting this event here. It was very moving for me, and I'm thinking where to go from here. Thank you.
I am Pamela Rothstein, a member of the steering committee of No Place for Hate Falmouth. Here, as the room is just cleared out, we had 300 people, a full capacity at this year's annual MLK National Holiday Community Breakfast. Again, this is an amazing show of community solidarity here in Falmouth. Several people not from Falmouth or new to Falmouth remarked how really uplifting it is and strengthening that we can come together and work together, that there's so much goodwill in our community. We heard from and were inspired by children who recited Dr. King's words so beautifully and in unison and sang. Musicians, our community Civic Leadership Award went to Samantha Bauer, and there could not be a more perfect an apt choice, a young woman who grew up in this community, who understands the power we have to affect change here one by one, to reach out to each other, that there's no need for any one person to be lonely, and who emphasized that we all get in a place, in a tough spot, in a narrow place, and that we need to reach out to each other to ask for help, and we need to be there for each other to give help. And that her organization serves everyone, and that she articulated that so beautifully was so impressive and moving. That she uses art as a source of her inspiration is also just, it's the complete package, and we are so glad to have bestowed that honor on her. She's so deserving, and the people who work with her. And we heard from Dr. Danique McIntosh, who inspired us through her reflections on Dr. King's words and actions to be discomfited, to take action. This comes back to Congressman Keating's words and admonitions too, that we have to put into place in action the discomfort we have with the inequalities, the lack of rights in our society. And we spent time together at tables and over wonderful, delicious food, so graciously put on and put forward to us by the Seacrest. We're very blessed to be in this location. And it was a cold but sunny day, so everything went well. And as always, we move forward into action as a community and individuals.